Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Real Estate Investing. I'm your host, Sharon Vornholt, and I'm so happy you're here today. My guest today is San Antonio investor Danny Johnson. Danny's an old friend, and he's been on the show a couple of times, and I'm really happy to have him back on today. He's the host of the popular blog Flipping Junkie, which is also a podcast by the same name. He's a veteran house flipper, and he's been in real estate since 2003. Danny's also the creator of Lead Propeller, of real estate investor websites, and Flip Pilot, lead deal management pipeline software, or CRM to say it a different way. So after focusing on the software for several years, he's becoming active again in real estate investing, and he looks forward to creating this and weathering this storm, we'll say, of this pandemic caused by COVID-19. Welcome to the show, Danny.
Hey, Sharon. Thanks for having me on.
It's been a while, and a lot has changed with your software. I'm always in awe of the fact that you can build websites and software and do real estate. So tell everybody a little bit about your backstory, how you got started, and how you got out of that job. Everybody wants to know how did they get out of their job and start flipping houses full time?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it definitely wasn't a quick thing. It took time. I think it was 3 years to get out of the job and into the full time into real estate investing. And it didn't have to be, but I was really, I guess I was afraid. Like I was afraid of not having a consistent lead and deal flow, like a consistent deals coming in. And I think at that point we were doing over 10 a year, and I was still working my full-time job because I was still thinking, oh, well, at any moment I could maybe stop getting deals. And so I think even though it was already there, like we knew how to do it and we're consistently getting those deals, there was still that fear of, okay, this paycheck comes every month from my job, but the house deals pay much, much more. But what happens if that dries up? And so I think maybe that fear could be there for a lot of people listening right now, thinking, if you've done a couple deals and you're like on the fence about quitting the job and all that kind of stuff, I understand it completely. It took me 3 years, and it took me the company I worked for firing me to go full time. I never actually made the decision to do it. They made it for me. My manager did come and say, I'm going to fight for you and try to keep you on. And I told him not to. Like, no, this is perfect. I needed this kick to get out there, and I was excited at that point. So all of a sudden that consistent paycheck wasn't such a for sure thing. So it made it easier.
Yeah, that makes a whole big difference when it might not be your choice for sure. Yeah. So how did you choose your investing strategy? What made you choose that one?
Yeah, well, I can go back into the story too of why I got into it is after college, right after college, I got a degree in computer science, and I started working for a defense contractor here in San Antonio doing software development. And my father at the time, it's still my father, he started flipping houses right after 2000. And we had those floods here in San Antonio and in some of the surrounding areas, some major floods. So there was a lot of flood properties. And he had started investing at that time. And before, he was a contractor for a real estate investor when I was growing up. And so he, after so many years, went to the guy he was working for, fixing up those houses, and said, hey, show me how to do this business. And he did. And so my father started flipping houses, and his whole life changed. Like he was just so much happier and excited about everything every single day. Like when I talked to him, it was something new. He was going across town to make an offer on this house, and he just bought this one that he said he was going to make $30,000 on. And, I was just like, wow, that sounds like a lot of fun, right? It sounds like if someone that's completely free to do what he wants during the day and have fun doing it. So I started looking into doing that, and decided to do what he was doing, to buy houses, fix them up, and sell them. And I think around that time, Flip This House was also a show, right? I think.
Oh, yeah. So we all grew up when that was our impetus for flipping houses.
Yeah, Trademark Properties,
yeah.
I think. Was
I loved the very first one.
Yeah, they were good. Yeah,
they were good. Weren't they in the Carolinas or someplace like that?
And so that was, man, I want to go back and watch some of those old episodes. But And so I got into doing that. And, I looked for, my first house was a house for myself to live in. And it ended up being a HUD home. So it took me 9 months to get that first deal.
Mm.
And I remember feeling so frustrated because I would call my dad and say, I can't find a good deal. I just can't find a good deal. And then I'd bring these properties I found by to, ask him, what do you think about the numbers on this one? And he'd say, no, it's not good. It's too much. It's too much. And I remember thinking, well, it's easy for you to say, you're already doing deals. And I would get frustrated. And so if anybody else out there listening is like in that position where they're doing that, they're hearing people like Sharon and myself talk about doing deals, and it sounds like it can be kind of frustrating because it's, it's like, it's easy for you to say you're paying too much because you've got enough deals coming in. But it's true, and it's good, because I think some investors, it's so tempting, and I was there. It's so tempting to pay more just to do that first deal. And, to be told, no, it's not a good deal over and over, and feel that crushing, oh, I'll never find one pain was good. It was hard to get those deals, but at least we got deals that made us money for sure. And then we knew and stayed in this business. I think when people go in paying too much, it might work out a time or two, but it only takes one really bad deal to make everything crumble. And then you're out of the business, and it's no good. But
it's not. People think it's an easy business, and they really don't realize you have to make a lot of offers, and it's terrifying enough to do your first deal. And if you do it wrong and you pay too much, and I think that's the thing I see all the time is people pay too much. And on my first deal, I made money, but you get to the point where, it's so, you said it, you've got to have a deal. You want a deal. And looking back, it wasn't that I knew the numbers were going to be close, but I had a net profit number in mind. But I had bad advice from a real estate agent, which was, this person was in my RIA, so I assumed they knew what they were talking about. Not true. So I tell people, you want an investor that's also a realtor, because when it all came down the pike, I made money, but the realtor made almost as much as I did, because then he was kind of a bully. Well, it's customary to pay first-time home buyer closing costs. Well, I didn't know. There were so many things I didn't know that it was like, I felt like I walked out with like a check for a few $1,000s, and I was just grateful that I made money. But
yeah,
boy, that was like a whole college education, that first deal.
Yeah, for sure. And buying right is so important. And that's why I think the first ones can be a little bit harder to get to, because you've got to buy almost a little bit lower than others, because you're going to make mistakes too. And right now, I think this is so relevant right now, right? Because we don't know what's going to happen with the real estate market, the economy, all that kind of stuff, depending on how long this whole coronavirus thing takes to pan out. And I hope everybody's staying safe with this. But we don't really know where the values are going. I don't think, I don't even want to make predictions. You just don't know, right? We don't know. So we need to buy low and have several options if we end up having to rent a property out. I don't honestly think that's going to get to that point. For most places, it could be worse in some places, but I don't think it's going to be like a major crash. But that's just my opinion. There's not a whole lot of like research behind that, just the feeling of it. But it makes me, as I'm getting back into this business right now, and I guess we'll go back into why I'm getting back in and where's the disconnect there. But, I'm back at that place of trying to find, the first deals again in my business, and knowing that I've got to buy them cheaper, because I don't want to stay up at night worrying about being able to sell the property or whatever. If banks, close, like not close, but stop lending, and home buyers aren't able to get, the loans to buy the properties as easily, all that kind of stuff. And so, finding a way to buy those at more of a discount is really important right now. And I think that's great if you're just getting started, because it's a perfect time, because there are investors that are sitting on the sidelines. Like, it's not all the competition is not gone, but it's definitely lowered. There's a lower amount of competition. And so I think the opportunity to get them cheaper is presenting itself and going to present itself more. It's just a matter of making sure that you are offering less. And
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think for certain niches, like I work a lot in the probate realm, and the whole COVID-19 thing aside, they haven't been able to file like probates from months back. So there's going to be a backlog of everything that has to do with court filings. And I think that will be certainly probates, maybe foreclosures. You know, we don't have a lot of foreclosures in my area, but if you're in Chicago, I think somebody said there were 38,000 prior to this. So there's going to be opportunity, and there's going to be, you and I both know, some of these small mom and pop landlords, they're going to go, this is just too painful. They've just put in my area that you can't do an eviction now until June 30th, and that's the new date. Who knows if that'll go on, but there will be a lot of investors, small mom and pop investors, that simply will not be able to survive. And if they do survive, they're going to go, this is the most miserable experience of my life. I want out. So I think that there will be a lot of opportunity, but you hit upon the other point is the financing. Where's the financing going to lie? Because that's the lesson I had to learn in 2008. That's when I became an accidental wholesaler. I didn't want to sit there with those properties for 9 months. First you do the rehab, and then you wait until somebody can get a loan. Well, we both know what happened. Retail buyers couldn't get a loan. So I had to change my whole buying model, because investors that were still buying were telling me it's a great rehab, but it won't cash flow. You know, it's a great retail sale. So I had to all of a sudden add one more layer to my business, which is what you just alluded to. If it takes a while for things to get to straighten out, and I have to rent this property, will it cash flow? That becomes a new metric in your business.
No, absolutely. And I think, you know, you got to consider what I've heard from talking to other investors, you know, around the country, and what they've noticed is, you know, obviously a lot of hard money lenders not lending. I'm going to stay liquid because I want to be ready if there's an opportunity. So they're not lending to people that are buying at the same numbers, but I'm sure they would still, some of them would still lend if you're buying it lower. You know, I mean, you're already getting a good deal. Maybe they'll put that money into that. But what that does also is, if you have people that had, because a lot of people do this, you know, and they set up, they get rental properties, right? And the way the numbers work, it's fine. They can handle when there's an eviction and there's a couple vacancies, because they're flipping also, they're wholesaling or whatever.
Right, exactly.
Which is the reserves. But if they're not doing that because they can't get hard money to do it or something like that, that could create a problem from them with the rental properties too. And then they end up in a bind, and, you know, there's like this domino effect, and they've got to sell their rental properties. And so, it'll be interesting to see what happens, but I think that there will be opportunity. And right now, for me, getting back into this business right now, my whole focus is I want properties that I can rent if I have to. And I'm going to buy low enough to make that make sense for me. So either way, and then usually if you do that, you know, with my numbers, the way I look at doing it, if I decide to wholesale that, it's cheap enough to where I can wholesale it too. And another investor doesn't want to buy it. So I've got outs, and so I'm not worried. If I put it under contract, I'm going to be super happy about it, and feel confident that I'll make money either way.
So Danny just said the really important thing here. You've got to have multiple exit strategies. If your exit strategy is to rehab it and sell it to a retail buyer, if that doesn't work out, then you need a backup plan. Maybe you will turn it into a rental, or maybe you'll buy a couple of properties and you'll decide you need to wholesale one for cash. So you've got to be able to pivot. I think now even more than 6 months ago, and you need multiple exit strategies for every single property that you buy. Now, I know you're a systems guy, and over the years, you kind of broke your business into two pieces. Like, you had a software company, you had a flipping company. But even before we dive into that, did you have, I suspect that you had processes and systems for a lot of things in your business.
Yeah, at first they were real, they weren't documented. So I don't know how much you could really call them processes and systems, because the documenting part of it. So, you know, my ex-wife was better about doing the documenting part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, but the written one for a long time was not that way. When things changed for us in the business was, I think I can probably attribute this to Andy McFarland, is a good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and saw him in Utah, and I was like, you've got an incredible business. Like, how are you having this all run so well? Like, what is the secret here? And he just gave me a book, and he said, this is it. This is all right here. I don't need to answer any other questions related to that, because this is what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And that book was Traction.
Traction.
Yeah. And yeah, Gino Wickman. I actually have it right here. It's out. Yeah. Traction.
Yeah.
Gino Wickman. And it's an entrepreneur operating system, I think is what they call, but it's just a way of a system to create systems. Right. And, and the big part of that made all the difference in both the software company and the house company was measuring numbers, right? The KPIs, key performance indicators. And I know it sounds like something, and I believed for a long time, well, that's something for big companies. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a house flipper. I'm a real estate investor. I'm about freedom. And
I'm gonna go look at a house. Never mind the paperwork.
Right. Yeah. I just felt like that wasn't like, I don't know. But there's a whole lot of truth. And I think as I matured in business, I realized the value in it. And really the statement my friend Greg Dickerson had told me about, he keep repeating this, so it's like ingrained in me now, is you can't manage what you don't measure.
Right. And
that includes for yourself. Like if you have to know what the numbers are, because then you can know what's happening. And everything changes so subtly, and we're doing so much and we're so busy. Unless you're tracking those and you're setting aside time to look at numbers and tracking every week, then you're not going to notice where things are falling apart until it's become a poop storm. I don't know,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think investors, if maybe that book is the secret, because the investors that I know, with few exceptions, they're out looking at houses, putting together deals, and they're not so much building a back end business as they are just doing deals. I think it's more important than ever, though, that you have a plan, like you said, based on numbers. How much does it cost me to get this lead? And one thing that I foresee coming is that people are not going to be throwing huge amounts of money at pay per click. They're not going to have it, so they're going to have to go back to some of the old ways of about in the olden days when we used to do all kinds of things like driving for dollars.
That's what I'm doing now. I'm doing the old school stuff.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's the stuff I love doing the most anyway, because it wasn't complicated. And it's actually, real world, get out and hit the streets kind of stuff. I was interviewed on Bigger Pockets a long time ago, like several years ago. And the thing I always remember from that interview, the one statement that I think I made in that interview that I completely remember was, step away from the computer, for heaven's sake. Like it's so tempting to just feel like everything can be done here, but there's so much missed by doing that, because, understanding your market, how do you do it? Like you can understand it by looking at stuff online, but you end up down rabbit holes. If you go and drive all the areas in your city and you haven't done that before, it's going to be a wonderful experience, because there's no reason to drive through many parts of town unless you're in a business where you're looking for property, right? Like there's not,
right.
Like I grew up in San Antonio and I hadn't been through 90% of it. And so just going through is I just love doing it. Like the whole drive for dollars thing, where I drive the areas and look for vacant houses.
Yeah.
You learn what the market is really, the living, breathing real estate market. Like you see the roll-off dumpsters on every other street, and you say, there's a lot of rehabs going on here. Like I know if I buy something here, I'm going to have investor buyers wanting to buy it from me if I want to wholesale.
Right.
You see what's going on.
It's a great way to meet contractors. So you pull up where there's a dumpster and a couple of trucks in the driveway, and there's so-and-so drywall too. It's a great way to meet people. But I used to do that all the time when I would look at a house. I kind of have like a 4-block rule. So I would drive in every direction, roughly 4 blocks, up and down the streets in every direction. And I would look at the overall neighborhood, not just the street I was buying. If you're in the neighborhood, was it overall a good neighborhood, or could you go 2 blocks over and there were cars up on blocks? So once you got a feel for neighborhoods, then it was a whole different matter. If someone called you and said, I have a house on this street, you'd go, I know that street. I know that neighborhood. So you had information that you couldn't get any other way other than physically being in that neighborhood.
Yeah, and that brings up a big point that I'm glad you said that, because I think I'll do that probably after this. Picking some areas of town. So like San Antonio is a pretty big city, one of the largest. And, I know that people have had a lot of success, and it doesn't seem so daunting, overwhelming to pick your farm area. Like pick the area that you're going to be the buyer in that area. So every time if you do bandit signs, watch out for legal issues with that locally. A lot of municipalities don't like that. But, if you do that, if you do any flyers or door hangers or, anything else, you kind of focus in these areas. And then those areas like the back of your hand. So anytime anything comes up, you're ready to snatch it up because you know it. You know what stuff's selling for. You know what's going on. And I like that. So you start to find your favorite parts of town and where you end up getting those deals, and you kind of focus on those.
It's good to have preferred areas and just to zip through those. And on the way back from looking at a property, there were certain areas that I loved. They had what I call basic bread and butter houses. Most of them were actually even on a slab, which is kind of unusual for my area, but they made great rental properties. They were great first-time home buyer properties. And I just made it a point to drive. When I would be in the area, I didn't go out and just randomly drive all day long, but I would make a point to go in those areas whenever I was anywhere around there and just check it out. I bought a lot of houses that way, because if you're in an area where there's, like you said, you find a couple of dumpsters, that the houses are turning over. Maybe that's a first-time home buyer neighborhood where people are moving up. There are certain clues in neighborhoods that you get from being out and about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about your business. So you were doing a lot of rehabs. You scaled that side of your business up pretty much, isn't that correct? And then you kind of split off. You were working on the CRM, working on the website. Tell me about how all that came to be.
Yeah, sure. We, my ex-wife and I were in the business for a long time, working together, and we had a realtor, and it was mostly just, us three for a long time doing that. And, rehab crews, I wouldn't do the work myself. And the way it was split was I would be focused on all the marketing, the acquisitions, and even dispositions of wholesale properties. Melissa would do the scope of work and, monitor the rehabs and the design and all that kind of stuff, and then work with the realtor to then sell the property. And I think it was, about 2013, 2014, I started developing, because the software background. I had already developed software for us internally, but I wanted to create something that was web-based, and was like, oh, well, this could be used by anybody. And so I was developing that, and while doing that, I was talking to Brandon Turner about my leads that I was getting from my book, the whole Flipping Houses Exposed thing, where I showed 495 leads and all those stuff that happened with each one of those leads. And most of those came from my website. And I was telling him, since that book came out, everybody's asking, can you build me a website? Where can I get a website? And he said, why doesn't anybody offer that to real estate? This was back then, and so I was like, yeah, it's right. Why not? So I built Lead Propeller, and thousands of people have trusted Lead Propeller with their website, and it's done really well, and we still operate that. So I was focused on that, and I was focused still on creating that CRM system, and it was a lot. It was a lot to do, to manage all of that, plus take a call and drop everything on the software to go look at the property, make the offer, deal with all of that. It's like, well, I got to do something. I've got to, at that time I met Justin Williams in California, and he was like, why are you still going to make offers on properties? I was like, well, I'm the only one that can do it. I'm the only person that can sign these things up.
Yeah.
And he said, no, that's not true. And so he helped me to see that I could hire people to do just as well, if not better than me, to do the acquisitions, make the offers and get the properties in the contract. And we started building that team. And but I was still kind of overseeing all of that. And so when I joined a mastermind with Justin several years ago, the first meeting was talking about, okay, well, I'm doing all this, and people are like, wow, you guys are doing a lot. Like, why are you doing so much? There's more upside in the software, so why are you? And so after that meeting, Melissa said, well, I can run the flipping company, so you can focus on software. Why don't you do that, and I'll focus on running the flipping company. And so we did that. We separated those. I was in the meetings for a while after that, just the meetings, to help see things maybe they weren't seeing, and got it to where they were looking at numbers, and so I could look at numbers too and know that things were happening, things were still trending up, and everything was looking good. And that's the goal of things like Traction, is to having that. And you should always have that for yourself, no matter how small of a company or how new you are to this business, because it helps you to see where you need to work, right? If the KPIs, and I'm going to try not to get too much on a tangent on this, but your KPIs in the beginning are all about getting the phone to ring. The KPIs in the beginning are all about getting leads across your desk, nothing else. If you set up whatever kind of crazy asset protection scheme with all these businesses, you design all these beautiful business cards, none of that is going to be worth anything if you don't have a deal ever come through your company.
Right.
So, like, there's nothing to do other than trying to find somebody that wants to sell their house. That's it. Like, that's the thing to do. So those numbers at the beginning should only be that, and you look at that. So that you're doing what you need to do every day to get the phone to ring. That's it. It makes it so you're not overwhelmed with all this other stuff you're supposed to learn. Just try to get your phone to ring. But yeah, so she was running that, and I was running the software company. And so I had really been out of the day-to-day in that for a couple of years. And unfortunately, we recently got divorced, and I was having lunch with my house flipping mentor just shortly after the divorce. And he said, because we're still really good friends. And he said, well, he asked me, he's like, are you going to get back in the business now? And I hadn't really thought about it. No, but as soon as he said that,
you hadn't thought about it?
I didn't have to even think about it. When he said that, I felt it. Like, I knew, yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. And then, of course, all the coronavirus stuff happened after of wanting to do it. So it's been interesting, but I'm not giving up on it. I am getting back in the business on my own as a separate company. So I do not have the people in place and everything to be able to do that. I'm doing it myself. And the reason why I loved that is because back in the beginning, I really loved the business for the fact that I could sit down and try to be creative on ways to get my phone to ring. And, what I love most about the day-to-day was the being creative part, the fun part of it. And I think, I did lose a lot of interest, and I'm just being honest here. Like, I think a lot of us will share, like, oh, we're doing these great deals and we're big shot investors and stuff. But, we get tired of it. Like, I got tired of it. I got tired of certain things. And I started seeing things the wrong way. I started seeing, like, trying to work myself out of the business. I would hire people and then be out of the business, right? To be able to go be on the beach. Well, it's not a whole lot of fun, really.
for a vacation, it's fun.
Right,
but
for a vacation, but I think you lose something there. And a lot of people are preaching this, and I think there's a way to do it, and it's right for some people. But for me, I didn't really. It made me lose interest in a lot of things, and I felt like it was wrong for me to even do any work. Like, I became anti-work. If a problem came up, I was frustrated. Why am I dealing with this? I should have people to deal with this. And it's just you lose some of the fun in it. And the house flipping mentor, he had a great story that it didn't even fit the conversation we were having. So I felt like, wow, this was something I was supposed to hear, because this popped into the middle of this conversation. He had said when Homevestors first started, And it was in Dallas, I think it was when they first started. The founder of Homevestors actually came down to San Antonio to talk with him about being one of the first franchisees.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, you know, he showed me all of the processes. He showed me the McDonald's sort of model of like, here's how everything works.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do you think? And my mentor told him, no, like
No.
what? He said, no, he pushed the papers back and he said, where's the creativity in this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where is the fun in this? Like what this is, you know, if I'm in, you know, that might be good for some people, but I think there is something missing there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because, you know, the creativity is the fun part of anything that we do. It's like you know, and I think a lot of us kind of like lose sight of that and lose, you know, the fun in it. But I think a lot of us do the same thing on our own level by looking at what other people are doing and trying to do exactly that and looking to them for the answers always.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can get some ideas from people, but we also need to spend time with ourselves figuring stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If we're always just constantly, okay, I don't know how I need to get deals, so I'm going to follow this guy and now he did his direct mail, and then I'm just going to copy what he did, and that's it. Like, you know, that's, you know, that could work, it could fail, but then if it's not working, you don't know why it's not working because you didn't really develop that process.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's some getting information, but I think at the end of the day, we all need to follow our own ways and getting into stuff and taking time and having fun doing it, because then it's not so much about the end goal of making a bunch of money, getting that freedom and everything's hunky-dory, because then you're not going to be happy until you've done that.
Right.
You know, and finding, you know, the fun ways, like to wake up and say, yes, like I get to sit here and I get to figure out how I'm going to get people to call me, how I can find some other people that might need to sell their home, and enjoy the process of all of it, you know, and then you've succeeded and you've had fun right now, and it wasn't all for later. And so with all that said, that's why I think I got excited again about getting into this business again when my mentor asked, like, if are you going to get back in this business? It's like, yeah, and I'm going to, because now I'm seeing it from a perspective of I'm not trying to work myself out of it. I'm just wanting to do it for the sake of doing it.
Right.
And were you going to say something?
No.
Okay. And so, yeah, so just finding, you know, the ways to find the deals and everything. And the fun part of that was with the software that we're building immediately, you know, granted, I've been in the business for what, like 17 years, like in the house, the real estate business, in 15, 17, I've been removed from it for the last couple of years, but I know it, like the back of my hand. Developing the software, I'm like, okay, I know investors need this and it should work like this. But it's amazing how much different it is when you're actually using it for your business. Like there's just something there you cannot get back. You cannot fake, you cannot get from other people that are active in it. You know, once I started getting calls again after doing some marketing and getting started again, you know, that first couple calls, I found myself going, man, I wish I could do this with the software right now, because I don't want to have to log in and do it. Like I could just, if I got this notification, I could do this and it's done. And so finding those things, because the real world usage of it, you know, is also super fun and fascinating and creative. It's like, oh man, I can do this, and we can build this in and make it easier for everybody using it. And so I'm equally as interested because of that aspect of it. And so I'm just like, it all goes together, and just the process of building out a business that doesn't need to be huge. That's not my goal anymore. My goal for the software, or the real estate investing business, is to have a fun business and, you know, enjoying that. And when I look at the investors that I know that have the most fun, that enjoy what they're doing every single day, they're not big businesses, and they don't want to be.
I was going to say that. Yeah, I think it's a conscious choice. And I never wanted to be a big business. I wanted to be about lifestyle. I wanted to be able to do creative things like you. Mine were little bit different, but it wasn't for me to have this business where it was cranking out 100 deals a year. That was never my goal. My goal was always to have a lifestyle balance and enjoy my business. And when I stepped back some from the actual real estate side of the business, was very much like your story. I just got tired You know, and I had to find a way to, because you have to stay in the game to know, well, what's going on in the market and the changes and all of that. And with marketing, that's always been my thing, is marketing. So you have to be in that stage. But when you look up one day and you find that you're not having fun anymore, you have to take a long, hard look and go, okay, what's the problem? Because having a big business for the sake of a big business, and I did this many deals, but I'm losing my mind. It's crazy to me. It's not something I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, in a lot of times when I've seen the numbers from people that created the bigger businesses, and then what they end up netting at the end of the day is like, whoa, whoa, there's a problem here. Like the big business, you require more, but you're paying a lot more to run this and keep this thing going. And so it can be a real tricky situation. And the smaller companies, the stuff, where it's a couple people, partners or something doing this business, can be even more profitable than a team of 10, and with a lot less work.
I think it depends on the person. I know a few people that have big businesses that have big teams, and they're happy with that. And I think a lot of it is on what you want in your life. So you weren't you all doing a lot? Wasn't that your goal at one time, to be doing a lot of deals? Yeah. Okay.
I think we set out to do 100.
100. That's
mastermind. Yeah. 100.
That's what I remember. 100. Yeah. So, well, let's shift a little bit here. I wanted to talk about your software. I know that you've got a great website product, and I know that where the CRM is concerned, people are just clamoring for something that they can use, that they can understand. For the non-techie people, they want to know, what is a software that I can use that will meet my needs, that I don't have to be, that it's not clunky, that it's easy. And I know that that's your goal with Flip Pilot. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, sure. Flip Pilot is actually, we're version 2.0, but really that's version 10.0, because this is built on like using software in my own business that I built personally that used to run on my laptop. And I would have to, if I lost the laptop, I'd lose everything kind of deal back then. And I've built that up in iteration over the years. And, we wanted to build up the big system and launch it a while back, which was Flip Pilot 1.0. And I learned a big valuable lesson that I created this big monster of software that had 1 million features, and I launched it at one time. Well, that was a problem because usability suffered from the just giant number of features and the bugs, because we hadn't had it out being used by a lot of people. And so we had a ton of features that had some bugs. And when you add all that up, it was kind of a big nightmare, really. And so I actually shut that down after spending about $1 million, I think, building that. I shut it down because it was like, oh, this doesn't feel right. This is not what I had in mind. And, so yeah, it was a painful thing to do, reorganize the company, and then set about building something with a different value proposition. Because honestly, the first version, we didn't really have a value proposition other than more features than the other guy. And at the end of the day, most of these, whenever I talk to people that use a lot of the features from these other companies, like the lists and stuff, they're not even using them, or they're not even any good. Like, it's just the feature added on to get you to buy the software, and it's ridiculous. It's just not even useful. So, and what that does when you introduce all of that is you make a complicated, frustrating system to use. And so we said, okay, the value proposition for Flip Pilot 2.0 is just going to be simple, easy to use. Like, this is powerful, but just easy to use. And what are we using this software for in the first place? Because it gets muddled after a while. People are buying it for different reasons. And really, at the end of the day, it's really just to know what's where in your company and having automation for things to save you time and make you more efficient. So what that means is being able to easily get the leads into your system through a website, through when a phone call happens, or just you punching it in with the keyboard, adding those in. and then moving them across. And we built this. If you can use Trello, you can use FlipPilot. It's the same concept. You move them across, and we see that as like a virtual whiteboard that most investors I know have, which shows what properties they're working and where they're at. And so this is what it does. And you just move it from column to column as it progresses through your workflow, from a new record to making contact, to setting appointment, to negotiating, to under contract, to rehabbing, all of that. It's just very simple. And automated follow-up so that you can have text and emails sent to people. Because and that's like where most of the strength is. Obviously, it gives you a lot of info, and you don't have to click around, which is a big thing. We have like basically, as you work through everything, it comes up, everything's in one place. So you don't have to go and hunt through stuff in menus. It's all just right there. So super, super simple. I'm going to get back into the follow-up in a minute, but I'm losing my train of thought here a little bit. Okay, so yeah, what was it? Oh, okay. So we talked about this before the show when I was talking about what we're working on with it. And what I found was in FlipPilot 1.0, the beast that cost $1 million to build, that was a nightmare. I spent 2 weeks, including weekends, like 10-hour days recording videos for that thing to show all the stuff that it did. Like literally, I mean, it nearly killed me. It was so painful to do that. And there were hundreds of videos, right? And so I was thinking, well, like this will help out with support, and then people will know what the software does. Well, guess what people do when you buy software? When I buy software, I buy it. I don't go and watch a bunch of videos.
Not 100 hours or 100 videos. Yeah.
So it seems obvious in hindsight, but you know, it's like you just get in and you want to play with it. And most of the systems out there, it's like they charge you $500 for setup, because why is it so hard? And it's like, we don't want that. Let's make it natural, because what people are going to do anyway, which is great because it's how I do it too. We're going to sign up and we want to just start using it. And so we built it in a way that can happen. You don't need $500 setup, or you got to wait next month to get it set up. You get in and you play with it because it's intuitive. So I loved that aspect of it. And we worked really hard to make it that way so that you could see everything at a glance, and it's just super simple. I love it. And the follow-ups though, I wanted to talk about that because I don't want, to just be promotional about the software. I love building software, so I love talking about it too. But with the way things are going right now, if the values, like we're having to buy lower, right? Well, I feel like I want to, and I have to buy lower just to feel better. And if I get better deals too, it works. With that, there might be a delay in sellers accepting lower for a while, saying, well, I've heard things are still selling, and it might take a little bit of time for them to accept, a lower offer more and more as time goes on with this. And so I think this whole follow-up matters that much more. And we, Sharon and I, we both have friends that, a mutual friend is Don Costa, right? And I think he said 40 or 50% of his deals are from follow-up.
Yeah, and I think Mike Hambright said 80% of his deals are from follow-up. So I think it can be a really big number, and it's even after people have said no, you go back, and like you said, people are still going to be of that mindset of 6 weeks, 2 months ago when it was a seller's market. Now I think it's going to take a little while for them to change, for you to change their expectations when it comes to what you're able to offer them.
Right. And as we start generating leads, my old system was my notebook. I'd get a lead, I'd write it down in my notebook. And then if I had to follow up, I would flip several pages for the future, several days or something, and I'd put and follow up on this. Well, that system falls apart really fast.
I had the same system. That is an awful system. Awful system.
It falls apart really, really fast. And so, yeah, we made a thing inside of FlipPilot called Schedule Contact, which does the same thing, but it automates it for you. And so you keep track of it. So you can manually call them if you want, or you can have the system send a text or an email, just check in with them. And that can also include personalized information so it doesn't seem automated. Because I think a lot of people have avoided doing follow-up sequences because they feel like it's going to seem automated. But it absolutely does not, because it can have their name in it. It can have the property address. It'll seem like you just sent it. You actually picked them out of the heap. I like to tell people that marketing is how you get deals, but branding is why they choose you. And all of things like
the little things like putting their name in there, like remembering when they get that, they think, well, he really does remember being here. He remembers the house. Those are the little things that make sellers choose you and make you stand out from all the other people sending out things. I got an email yesterday from someone that had clearly cut and pasted parts of an email on a thing. It had 5 different size text on it.
Oh,
And,
wow.
the name was, it had my name on there, but then it had a link to the house was in this giant text. And I wanted so badly to say, dude, no, but you've got no credibility with this email. Look at what you just did, because did I click on it? No. I had absolutely zero confidence that guy, I don't know where he got the deal or if it was even his deal, but it was just a big hot mess. So you have to think about that in every interaction with these sellers. It can be simple, like you said, and it does need to be simple. They don't want to be overwhelmed with all this fancy jargon and all of that, but they want to know at the end of the day that you are a stand-up business person that can help them solve their problem. That's the thing that they have to believe, is you can help them solve their problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And the follow-up, there's 2 ways to look at it, right? The people that I know, that I'm amazed by some of the people that I know that don't send the follow-up. And I'm like, why don't you do it? Because they just hadn't done it yet. They haven't set it up.
Mm-hmm.
So we made it easy to set up so that that's not an excuse anymore. But the thing is, like, you can say, well, it's going to be bothering people. No, if they're bothered, let them be bothered. I mean, they can unsubscribe from getting those emails and texts and stuff. So that's fine. But the ones that, where motivation changes over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
They might not be ready to buy now or sell now or accept your offer now. But over time, you never know what can happen in their life where that makes sense all of a sudden. And so if you were that person, put yourself in their shoes, because all of this, this is the fun, creative part of it. Everything always needs to be, put myself in their shoes. If I'm receiving this and something happens, how would I see that? And I would see that as, wow, this person is like on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
They're still checking in with me. They must be running a good business or, be really on top of things because they are still managing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can see that as, wow, if I'm going to sell, maybe I got the 5th message from them and I'm still not ready. But, 2 or 3 months down the line, if I'm thinking again, oh, yeah, I need to sell. I just need to sell. I need to get, who's going to come to mind first?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? The one that they said, wow, this person is on top of it and they are following up with me.
Well, and I found statistically that just over 80% of your deals come at or beyond your 5th mailing with direct mail. But 90% of the people quit on or before the 3rd mailing. So simply by staying in the game, you're already ahead of almost all of your competition. And when people say no to me, what my standard thing to say to them is, well, I hope your plan A works out, and I really do hope it works out for you. But just in case it doesn't, can I be your plan B? Is it okay if I keep you on my list? So right at that time, I get their permission to keep them on my direct mail list so that they're not annoyed. And then I just keep on keeping on. Somebody says, when do you stop mailing? Well, my answer is when I buy the house, someone else buys the house, or they absolutely say, I'm going to come after you if you send me another letter. So that's my standard answer. There's no 5 touches or 7 touches or 3, or I never really understood that. Why would you quit? If you're doing direct mail, why would you quit doing direct mail if the house is still available? I don't understand.
Where we shoot ourselves in the foot the most in those situations? With our assumptions. We assume because we feel like we would be annoyed that they're going to be annoyed. That's an assumption. You have no idea. And so to stop, it's, because you don't talk to all these people. You could not possibly know how they feel about receiving your stuff.
You can't.
So let go of that, right? Let go of, like, if they tell you to take me off, then okay, they responded, now you know. But the rest of them, don't make assumptions. Don't make assumptions that everybody sees it a certain way.
Well, this has been really good advice, Danny. One objection I did want to touch on is people always say, but this is going to cost me money. is every month I've got to spend money on this and I've got to spend money on that. And I like to tell people you can only go free for so long. What do you say to people that don't want to spend money on a CRM?
What do I want to say to them? Well, I mean, it's fine if you are fine doing what you're doing and it's working out. But if you want to get into where you have this automation that's helping you to get these deals, because it's going to make it to where you don't have to juggle, writing every couple days all these people you're supposed to be following up with manually down the stream, all that kind of stuff. And you want to set it up to where it can go for even a year of these follow-up messages, even spread out over time. For that, it just makes sense, right? It's an investment in the business to help you with your marketing. And really, we're not talking about a ton of money here either. So it's just an investment in the business, and to see it as an investment, because, if people, like Mike Hambright, right? If 80% of his deals come for follow-up and you're not doing follow-up, what does that tell you? Right? You got 20 deals, but if you didn't do the follow-up, did you miss out on 80 deals? Mm-hmm. Right? So how many of those deals does it take to cover that for years and years and years? One, usually, with this business, right? So it's an investment. If you're doing marketing of any kind and you're spending money on that, you need a system to help you manage those leads, right? Yeah. And to be able to get more out of them, because you'll find out it is a numbers game, but you can improve your numbers big time. You can improve those numbers. And how do you improve them? You have to have a way to know what they are. And systems like this make that easy, because it tracks it for you. And then you don't have to manually do it. And you'll find, spending hours on it, what's your time worth? I'm sending, if you're saying this month I saved, $150 because I didn't have that software. It was like, well, let's look if you really save that money. If you just spent, 3 hours like trying to figure out your numbers, and then you didn't do the follow-up, so you lost those deals, how much are you really losing? Like, first, for the time savings, like, what is your time worth? And, and I hope you're putting like $1,000 an hour on it if you're an entrepreneur like that. You're going to see it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Yeah.
That's great. That's great advice. So based on your experience, this is a challenging time for investors, and with the COVID-19, nobody is really 100% sure what's going to happen. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity. Time will tell. But do you have some final advice for people? Maybe people just getting started. You're ramping back up your business. What would you say to them at this particular time?
I would say don't wait. Because I think there's a tendency to sit back and say, I can stay in my comfort zone now. There's an excuse. There's an excuse for me. I think more than anything, it's a good time to get out there and hit the streets and try to find, these deals and offer lower, because, being new, you're going to want to anyway. So right now might be a better time than most, because you are maybe able to get those properties for cheaper to cover whatever mistakes you might make in the beginning of doing this business. And the opportunity to buy lower will be there. And so just like said, and it takes time anyway, right? Like, we can be afraid to take action because we're afraid that the perfect example was whenever I put my bandit signs out for the first time ever, these signs that say I buy houses with your phone number, and you put them on telephone poles. When I first did that, I think I put out 20, and I was scared to death. I was expecting I was going to get 100 calls, and, and I didn't know how I was going to deal with all that. I was just like, I need to know, I just need to get the phone to ring. Well, guess what? The phone didn't ring. Like 20 signs, I maybe got a couple calls. So my fear was totally unfounded, and I didn't know until I did it what the experience was going to be like anyway. And so fumbling through those first calls, like I wish I hadn't put it off for so long. Like, I was scared to death on that first call. I had no idea what to say. I fumbled through that. But so what? Like, so what? I look like an idiot. Who cares? I then knew next time I get a call, I need to know how to respond to these questions.
Well, I like to tell people, practice when it doesn't matter so much. When make your mistakes early on, just get out there and do it. You're going to muck it up. So just know that everybody does it. But then it'll come along where there's a deal that you really want. And that one you don't want. You want to be able to talk to a seller when when that day comes.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, Danny, thanks so much. I'm going to put the links to his software and to Lead Propeller and all of that. But what's the best way for folks to reach out to you if they want to ask you questions about any of this or get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the best thing to do is go to on Facebook, the Flipping Junkie group. I have a group in there. Just go to Flipping Junkie group in Facebook, because that way you can ask questions and I can answer, other people can answer, and help you out and just become a part of that community. Obviously, flippingjunkie.com is the blog. So I have my podcast episodes and the information on there. Mm-hmm. And I did put together, I asked 8 real estate investors, including Sharon, some questions about the 20% of things they do that produce 80% of the results in generating leads. And then also what changes they're making in their business because of the current situation with the pandemic. And that's free on my website as well. If you go to flippingjunkie.com/pandemic, flippingjunkie.com/pandemic, you can get a hold of that. And that's got Sharon's answers as well as 7 other investors. And then what I'm doing to get started in the business again is also in that 17-page PDF.
I actually wrote all those answers. There were some really great answers in there. It was funny how there were certain commonalities among all the people, and it was a great resource. And thank you for inviting me to be part of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, folks, I think that's it for today. Like I said, I'll put all the links to Danny's to Lead Propeller and to all of the resources that he shared in the show. And if you like the show, please share it. And we would appreciate it if you'd head over to iTunes and leave a rating and a review. So that's it for today, guys. I'll see you next week, same time, same place. Bye for now. Awesome. Thanks, Danny.
Thank you.